here we go. Okay, let's go in the other room. The Lady in a Cage, the film was made in 1963, Paramount Studios, a very strange film, and some of you people, it keeps repeating, some of you people have probably seen it. It stars Olivia de Havilland, who was a many-time, I believe, Oscar winner. You probably remember her in Gone with the Wind. It's a beautiful young woman, and she actually is age 16 in Disraeli. The really first, before the jazz singer, the really first talkie, okay? Because jazz singer still had cards and it only had music sung. So Olivia de Havilland is probably her last picture, and she is absolutely magnificent. Well, she was such a great actress. And it is the beginning of the career of James Caan, who plays this nasty boy who comes in and ruins everything. We've also got Anne Southern, who was an extremely important actress in the past. Very beautiful woman and a very fine actress. Jeff Corey, who only you super moviegoers know who he is, was one of these very extraordinary actors. And so on. And the film was directed by Walter Grauman, who, strangely enough, went into television. I think he maybe did a couple of other Western-type films. And Walter Grauman directed the film. It was produced by Luther Davis. Well, the soundtrack is a very special kind of music in which uses, probably the first and last time, uses something called the third string. Film music can sometimes be some of your best music because you get an idea from some scene that turns you on and what you want to do. Well, it was clear to me that Olivia de Havilland is a person living in the past. So give her music and instruments, because every musical instrument has its history. Give her instruments that make you think about the past. So I put the harpsichord in there. I'm not sure I was the first guy to put harpsichord in film music, but one of the first guys. Harpsichord is the thing that takes you back to 1700s and so on. And the strings, the violin, a great violin soloist. He was first violinist of the Budapest Quartet and had a real Strad. And so that was nice. And a very great cellist, Raphael Kramer. And they're just amazing musicians, right? And so I had that part of the music with the kind of the woodwinds for a fill-in. The great, did you know Mitchell Lurie? Did you know that name? Mitchell Lurie? Great clarinet, the greatest, yeah. Mitchell was there, and Arthur Gleghorn, who was considered to have the greatest flute sound that ever was. An English guy, he was great. He was, I think, first flute at MGM, but I'm not sure. And then we had Norman Hertzberg, who was the first bassoon of the New York Phil. And so we had just absolute superstars. And the music and the orchestra, and as I pointed out, we had the drummer from Toscanini's band, from the NBC Symphony. I mean, it's the kind of things that Hollywood, is even in your symphonic music and stuff, you cannot ask for, you cannot have. Those guys were assembled, there they were. This absolute, when I think about it, when I see the list of these names, and when I think about what greatness, we had this group of tramps, kid tramps, probably druggies or whatever they were, who, with a electric failure, the lady gets stuck in her homemade, her home-built elevator halfway between floor 1 and 2, right? So these kids think it's an opportunity to go in and rip off the house. And that's what they do. And they go in, and they're really bad kids. Now, what I did was, for instrumentation, one of the kids was Rafael Campos, who represents for us the Hispanic group. The other kid was probably a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, James Caan, and the other one was his girlfriend, who was rather an ordinary little blonde, and Ann Southern, who was a kind of the friend of a drunk who was Jeff Corey. So they all had to have, and this is as old as sin, they all had to have instruments. And, you know, it doesn't have to be a tune or a song or somebody singing something, some bloody platitude. It doesn't have to be that. You can do it with the history that's within an instrument. And so the drunkard, as Hugo Friedhofer came with the idea, he said, well, give it the interval. There's an interval in jazz music that was always used called the flat fifth. This becomes the basic sound of the drunkard. Now, it has nothing to do with a drunkard, but the fact that it's a flatted fifth. Hugo said to me, what does this drunkard do? He flats fifths, because in those days people drank whiskey. They were called fifths, right? So we use the flatted fifth. Okay, that's a good example of how a composer goes about to find his material. Okay, the other thing that happened was the idea I could contrast this tiny little group of Baroque musicians and this kid. What did it suggest to me? The way he walked around, his Levi's, and how he talked, and what, you know, and he belches, and he's really a disgusting mess. What did that do to me? Something that goes boom, 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 boom. It's got to be something kind of jazzy, or something that my dear friend Quincy Jones used to say. Give it the hookity-ding-ding, which is exactly the description that Quincy used for the string bass. Hookity-ding, ding, 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 that's what it is. So that was another thing that was established. Well, I also had Mike Rubin, Meyer Rubin, who, or Mike, whatever you want to call him, Mike Rubin, who was the greatest bass player going in Hollywood, most incredible guy, and who was first bass, the Chicago Symphony. He played in jazz trios. He was great. He played in the Chicago Symphony, and he played in the Fox Orchestra. So we borrowed him at Paramount. That could happen. And so we had guys you couldn't believe. When you hear the record, you'll agree, isn't it? It's ridiculous. So we'll play something real quick, and you can listen to one cue. Anyway, so the idea was to contrast this low-life bum and his friends and the drunkard. And I even gave a little bit of bongos for the Spanish kid. Why not? Those things help. That kid didn't play the bongos. It had nothing to do with him. But he was known as that kind of a kid. He was cast for that sort of a part. And so he gets bongos. It's obvious. Olivia Haven gets a harpsichord. And James Caan gets some pretty low, dirty jazz. So, I mean, that's how you go about making a film.